My brother Dan's going to come up and share.
Thank you. Well, like Steve said, I'm Daniel Skinner. A lot of you might not know me. I'm the apple that fell far from the tree and kept rolling. But I don't sleep very well, and I got up this morning and sat in my dad's chair and saw his Bible, one of his Bibles laying there. And Isaiah 33 verse 2 came up, and it reads something like this. O Lord, be gracious to us. We long for you. Be our strength every morning and our salvation in our time of stress. So that kind of fits for some of us today. Roy Skinner came into this world on June 29th, 1922. He was the youngest of 5 kids, and he grew up on a farm in Missouri, or Missouri, as he would say. Steve actually copied that from me. He read like that. Those were the Depression years. In his family garden and what they grew, they dried, canned, and preserved to make it through the harsh winters. In 1942, when he was 20, Uncle Sam called. He answered and was sent to Italy, where he was awarded 3 Bronze Stars and a Good Conduct Medal. Not only did he not brag about the medals, he never even bothered to mention them. 60 million people died in that war. But even though he was in combat for most of his service, he and his brothers Rodney and Leonard Skinner made it through unscathed. It was not his time. After he came home, he met a pretty little red-haired gal and got married. They moved around a bit. Pops went to Watson Clockmaker School in Peoria, Illinois, where David was born. Back to Kirksville, Missouri, where Deb was born. And then out to Denver, where Sally, Steve, Tim, and I were born. In 1962, with another Rocky Mountain winter approaching, Pops packed us all up in a '59 Chevy van. That's actually up for debate, with my brothers and sisters. We can't really exactly remember what it was, but I think it was I was 5, I probably remember, right? He did not like the idea of raising kids in a big city, so he headed west. The facts that he didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, and was 40 years old didn't faze him in the least. He knew the Lord would have his back, and he was stubborn enough to keep on keeping on until he made it. We landed in Yamhill County near Gaston, where he bought 88 acres and commenced to being a farmer. Didn't take him too long to realize that he needed to have a little more cash flow, and so he moved into nearby Forest Grove and started doing watch and clock repairing for a local jewelry store. It was piecework, but he was good enough and fast enough. And after selling off 78 of those 88 acres he bought in Gaston, he was able to build a brand new house for us in 1965. Always the wheeler dealer, soon enough he was able to buy an old 1894 Victorian to rent out for extra income. My older brother, sisters, and I, one by one, came of age and moved out and got on with our lives. In 1974, I think, Pops moved down here with my mom, Steve, and Tim to Kaiser. He bought a mint farm, and with his tractor, he planted strawberries, raspberries, and huge gardens. God had given another chance at his shot of living the farmer's life. He also continued to fix watches and clocks at his little shop in Kaiser. Deb got to work with him there for about 10 years, and Steve and Tim got the privilege of moving irrigation pipe in the 13 acres of mint. I wish I could have done that. Actually, it might come as a surprise now, but Steve, Tim, and I were not always the awesome and perfect guys that we are now. We were not exactly model teenagers, and a lot of parents would have given up on us for a lot less. But not Pops. Even though he threatened otherwise our whole lives, in the darkest hours on our bleakest days, he was right there with us to see us through. And when we were finally ready, he was there to help us grow into the good guys that we are today. He's a good guy. The game of life has a tendency of throwing out an occasional curveball, and while Pops is not exactly Job, his faith was severely tested in other ways too. Weird family health issues, crazy business deals. He stayed positive, and more important, the 10 Commandments remain commandments and were not just suggestions. He lived by them. His last years were no picnic. Actually, he was never much of a picnicker. His 11th commandment was, if you're going to waste time, work it to death. He lived by that one too. We've all heard the adage, no one at the end of their life wishes they'd work more. Well, actually, when he was well into his 80s, Tim asked him if there was anything he had wanted to do or a place he wished he'd visit. His answer was that he wished he'd worked a little harder and gotten a little more done. Around the same time, when I'd gotten back from a trip to Asia, I asked him a similar thing. Is there any place you'd like to visit, Dad? You want to go on a trip? Blah, blah. He thought for a minute, and he goes, frankly, I can't think of any place I'd rather be than sitting under this walnut tree in the backyard of his place out in Kaiser. I have to agree, it was a pretty nice place, and I was happy that he found it. Even in the last few years since my mom died and his body really started to fall apart, with Sally's help, he continued to grow his gardens. Sally and Brandon soon took on the role of farm caretakers. Sally and Pops planting, harvesting, and canning. Meanwhile, Brandon took on mowing the land and doing a lot of the heavy stuff that is involved with having 20 acres on the river. Now, I didn't actually inherit my dad's work ethic, but I did get his humor, his generosity, his curiosity, and as the song says, well, I'm about as honest as a Denver man can be. With the help of Sally, Steve, Deb, and Tim, Pops was able to stay on the farm till the end, like he had hoped. Last Friday, April 8th, 3 months shy of his 89th birthday. Pops got up, got dressed, and went out to sit in his favorite chair by the window. He liked to watch the birds eat out of their feeders and the big tractors in the fields across the road plow and disc. That's when his Heavenly Father called out, Roy Stanley Skinner, the roll is being called. Come on up yonder.